this helicopter's going down. It's falling out of the sky. Pilot, brilliant. And I just start praying, like, Lord, please spare us. What's up, everybody? Today we're going to be doing something a little different. It's testimony time. Let's get started. Over the years, when I've given my testimony, and for those of you that don't know what that is, it's sort of a background of who you are and what you've been through as a Christian. It could be that your testimony is regarding your conversion experience, what led you to trust in Jesus Christ as your Savior, or some other part of your background or history, your life. Today I'm going to sort of cover it broadly. I'm going to cover first things sort of leading up to my conversion, and then things after in my life as a pastor. The reason we do this is sometimes it actually helps people, because when they're experiencing similar things, they realize, hey, I'm not the only one like this. And so it's kind of nice to hear and see when you have people that you talk to that have gone through the same things you have. But also another reason why is for folks to understand that, hey, if Jesus Christ can forgive this crazy guy, right, he can forgive me. So and there can be other reasons that I haven't listed. I grew up in a Christian home. We were a mixture of Episcopalian and Catholic. Episcopalian on one side of the family and Catholic on the other. I would say that my parents were fairly godly people, and we went to church, but the understanding of the gospel, not necessarily in my home, just the way it was presented at the church where I would attend. There were a couple. We moved from South Florida up to Central Florida when I was about 12 years old, so there was a bit of a change there. But anyway, that the gospel was not really presented the way it would have been beneficial for me in order to have accepted it. It just was sort of out there, but I didn't understand about the relationship I needed to have with Jesus Christ. Even growing up then as a teenager, I think I just presumed that by being in a Christian family and believing that there is a God and a man named Jesus Christ who was God, is God, right, that died on a cross, that therefore that must mean I have salvation. Now, fortunately, I went to I want to say they were Baptist or Baptistic school when I was from from first grade till about the third grade, and then my brother and I got moved somewhere else. The school was not bad. It was named Bibletown down in Boca Raton. I, for the most part, enjoyed it, but had some trouble kind of fitting in there, and I think part of it is it was more, I think, what I would call fundamentalist, where obviously my upbringing was not. The church that I went to would have been considered very liberal compared to this one. Now keep in mind, I was born in the 70s, so the Episcopal Church has changed quite a bit even since then, become far more liberal. But this is also, a lot of the scholars that came out of the Episcopal Church are what founded the Jesus Seminar, which is incredibly liberal. So that's sort of my background. So keep in mind, now I'm at a Baptist school, and of course it's not resonating with me. I'm very young. I'm 6 to 9 years old roughly, from the different grades, and I don't understand why Dracula is bad, or I don't understand why certain things in the culture are bad, because they're not bad necessarily in my home, or if they are, they're not looked at the same way. Maybe that'll help. So my brother and I really didn't fit in, and we started getting in a lot of fights. Well, I did in particular, because of that. And I would be coming out of the principal's office, and he would be going in. Now, probably for different reasons. My brother's pretty astute guy, very smart. So, but nevertheless, I was getting in quite a bit of trouble. So I ended up going to public school for the rest of my elementary and then secondary education, up until I went to college. That was what I was doing, and even into a few years of junior college. So anyway, fast forward to my teenage years, and one of my best friends, this friend of mine and I were thick as thieves. And he wasn't a bad person, but we were hanging out with people that were. And I was working at his family's restaurant, and some people may not like this expression, but it would have been deemed a soul food restaurant. I mean, I learned to cook cube steak, oxtails, collards, smothered pork chops, you name it, right? This restaurant was at one point a very rough part of town. I was one of the only few, I guess, Caucasian guys that could go in this part of town and not really be messed with too much. And of course I earned the nickname White Boy Sean, which is a very creative nickname, or Wonderloaf sometimes. And people didn't really mess with me, because of my ethnicity. And one night we're out, we get in trouble. So, two guys try to attack him. I try to defend him. Anyway, accusations get hurled at me later on, and I end up in jail. So I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but I was arrested twice during this period of my life for two different things. And broke my mom's heart, of course, made it hard on my family. And it wasn't necessarily that I was trying to be a thug. I was partly trying to just fit in, and partly it's just this friend of mine and I were hanging out with the wrong people, and I think that caused it. Now, ironically, the friend of mine that I'm referring to, he's a preacher now as well. So it's funny how God uses guys like us, in those circumstances. But we saw some really rough stuff. I mean, I had guns pulled on me and put in my face at a young age. And prior to this, I'm playing in rock bands. That's one of my hobbies as a musician. This room that I'm recording in, that Eric and I record most of the videos in, is a studio. I've got a separate degree aside from my theology stuff that is in music from Berklee College of Music. So I really enjoy music. So again, here I am in this situation, in places where I really don't belong at the age of 15, and have seen stuff that would make most people's hair turn white. I'd see people get jumped, and I mean grown men jumping another grown man, injuring him, beating him, nearly killing him in the drive-thru of the restaurant because of the location. That didn't happen every day. It doesn't matter. Again, that area that the restaurant bordered was called Little Vietnam for a reason in our town. Again, the restaurant owner and his family, they're all awesome. They're good people. Now, why am I saying all this? Why in the world does this have anything to do with my testimony? Remember, I mentioned I go to jail. One of the times I get arrested, the police come on a Sunday and arrest me right after church in front of my family. It was a rough time in my life. Yet, that's not what brought me to salvation. It wasn't until a few years later, I'm going to school and I'm working now as a supervisor for a warehouse at Sears Merritt Island. And a young lady and her family invite me to church. And so I go. I become good friends with her family and a lot of the people there at the church, and it's a fundamental Baptist church. And they're preaching the gospel. Now, thankfully, they're not just preaching the gospel. They would teach doctrine, and they would get deep. Over time, some of that started sinking in. But that's still not what got me to salvation. That's not what got me to Christ. So it's not suffering and going to jail and experiencing bad situations. And it's not just going to church by itself. What happens is I borrow a book from the church library on John Bunyan, and it's called Tinkerer of Bedford, something like that. It's not Pilgrim's Progress or one of the books he wrote, it's a book about him, so some sort of biography. Here we have Bunyan talking about his salvation experience in the book. And I'll never forget where I was. I was in my room one night up late reading, and it clicked. This is like 1996, 97. It just clicked. It just made absolute and utter sense that here I am sitting in my room reading this, and it was the way that it's described about what he understood to be salvation for him. And I went, oh, it's not based on my family. It's not based on knowing these things. It's about a relationship with Jesus Christ. Now, you would think, sitting in a good fundamental Baptist church, hearing the gospel preached all the time, and they were preaching it right, it would have made sense. But because, keep in mind, I'm assuming I'm already saved. So all of that is just flying right over my head. And it was at this point that God used this book, and it just clicked. However you want to say it, that the Holy Spirit drew me through that and everything else, whether I rationally understood it, faith versus reason, and I'm not worried about right now, okay? I'm just simply describing the moment at which this occurred. And I got down on my knees in tears and asked Jesus to be my Savior. And that was it. I was in church fairly frequently before, but now I was there instead of for the friends and everything else. I was in it because I realized what it meant to me and my relationship with God. So now, fast forward, I'm going all out, and I was very blessed to have the pastor of that church to become his understudy. He used to call me as Timothy, and instead of going off to Bible college, I was to go there, study for 4 years, and then be ordained, and then eventually go on and pastor a church. And they had material for me, folks. This isn't just like, hey, come here and show up on Sundays and we'll ordain you after 4 years. After work, they would be in the gym playing ball, sometimes up till midnight. My brother would show up and he'd go over and play with them sometimes. And there I was in an office they gave me, just studying. So I'm getting off work 4 or 5. I'm up studying till 12:30 at night some nights. The guys leaving on their way out be like, "You're still in here?" Yeah, I got a lot of catching up to do. Why? Because a lot of these young men grew up as pastors' kids, so they had all this education and understanding, and I don't have a clue. So I'm studying on my own. They're giving me material to study. Also courses for the church body as a whole. So there's discipleship courses on basic doctrines and whatnot. So I would go to those courses. I was getting basic theology, doctrines, hermeneutics, homiletics, and then a lot of real world experience where I am assisting the pastor, preaching, occasionally chapels mostly for the high school, but I'm also assisting with funerals. One of my great friends during that time period, and I would still consider him a friend, Chad, he and I had a bus route where we started from scratch and built up, and I don't know what we ended up with, 30, 40 kids. It was great. So we're out picking up kids for church on Sundays, cold knocking doors, doing soul winning and just what fundamental Baptist churches do. We show up one day to take the van out. We would usually take the van and go out and visit the kids on Saturday, find out who's showing up so that when we pick them up on Sunday, we're not stopping by houses where people aren't going to be home. And we'd visit the kids, bring them a flyer, just encourage them to be there, whatever, see if they need anything, pray for them, oftentimes the case, and the families, just get in their lives. But never intrude. That wasn't what we were trying to do either. We show up, and lo and behold, what happens to get the van? Well, the teens had taken it. I'll never forget Charlie Brown saying to me, it's a shame when we lose one of our own. And I'm like, what are you talking about, Charlie? Charlie's a World War II veteran. He was in the 90s at this time. I don't know, 98, 99. Was a Ranger that landed in Normandy. Yeah. And awesome guy. Just incredible man. He would come into my office many times, or the office that I was using, and encourage me and mentor me as well. And we come to find out, make a long story short, the van that they had taken had flipped over. Several of the teenagers, they were out on a teen trip to go to some of the natural springs here in Florida, and it had dumped a few of the kids out and had landed on one, and she lost her life. That was tough on the whole church. It wasn't the driver's fault. This was during one of the big tire recalls. I don't remember who it was. The tires had failed. They were brand new tires that had been put on the van recently, and the treads had flown off or something or blown out. I don't know what happened, but it was determined to cause the accident. So it was completely out of the driver's hands, to my knowledge and my recollection. I might have it wrong, but that's what this is. Folks understand this is a long time ago. This is in the 90s when this occurred. So now I'm being sent over to go counsel with the family. I know them. I know this young lady. She's dating my friend, and I just don't know what, I know what to do and what to say, but imagine when you're thrust into the situation where, you're the guy. And so that was a very difficult situation for me. The sweet girl, just sweet girl. I remember the last conversation she and I had before all this went down. We had gone out for ice cream, the whole group, teens and young adults, and just tragic. At some point I realized, external to all of this, that I need to go off to Bible college because I'm getting a lot of experience, but I wasn't getting enough education. A lot of the other young preacher boys were coming home on vacations, and they knew quite a bit. They were learning in their classes. I'm like, well, what's that? What books are you using? So I wanted to run out and buy the textbooks they're using so I could study these things and use them. Unbeknownst to me that a lot of what I wanted to know I would learn in my mentorship, or it just wasn't important at the time, but I wanted to do what everyone else was doing. Chad and I, my good friend, we ended up going off to college up in Jacksonville, Florida, at Trinity, and we loved it there. I was very blessed because my first semester there, not only do I meet my wife and we start dating, but I get hired on as the assistant to the senior pastor. Trinity is a huge church. I don't know what qualifies as megachurch status, but this thing's on 160 some odd acres, and 12 assistant pastors, and then other pastors, and secretaries, and it's a huge staff. And I'm being hired to assist the senior pastor, Tom Messer, Pastor Messer, as his researcher. Now I'm not doing his sermons for him. I'm a researcher, so I pull information, pull research, sometimes do word studies, whatever, just to help with knock out preliminary stuff, It's just a ton of research is what I'm doing for him. And he's telling me, where to draw resources from and what to do and what to get. And that was an incredible experience once again. I'm getting college, but I'm also getting this. And so what happens is, at some point, they're hiring interns. I'm also working a full-time job in addition to working for him. And so I'm working during the summers full-time. So I'm doing 2 different staff jobs, which is awesome. The amount of experience that I gained was tremendous. So here I am again for 3 years or so doing all of this, plus I'm running bus route as a bus captain, which means I'm in charge of the route and with 2 or 3 other college students. Tom, awesome guy, on fire for the Lord, man. Tom and I didn't always agree, but Tom, if you ever watch this, man, you're an awesome guy. And we took that route, and with Erica, my wife, and a few other folks that would kind of come and go, that would assist us, and had to split the route. It got so big. In other words, we had so many kids on the bus, it would have been illegal to keep running it at that capacity, so we had to split the route to 2 different bus routes. That doesn't happen in that time period. This is 99, 2000, 2001 kind of time frame. So that kind of thing wasn't happening. Bus ministries were already starting to sort of slow down at this point. We're just really blessed. It wasn't necessarily that Tom and I are awesome, it's just the way things worked out. And Eric and I get married in July of 2001, and here we are getting ready to go back to school, or in school, and what happens September 11th? 9/11. And so now I have to make a decision. It didn't take long after praying. I knew what the Lord wanted me to do. Talked to Erica, and I'm in the military. September 12th, essentially, 2001, I'm in the recruiter's office, or I'm calling him on the phone. I'm not officially in until January. I'm going through basic because there's a backlog. Everyone's trying to get in and sign up. So go in, do all my training, excel pretty well at it, end up leading a fire team in an infantry unit in Afghanistan, working with a bunch of great guys. And once again, I'm very blessed because I'm in one of the greatest units, in my opinion, with a fantastic set of leaders and mentors. We were very blessed to have some really good officers, which isn't always the case, but we did. We had good ones, and we had incredible NCOs, in my opinion. Again, I didn't always agree with everyone. Everyone didn't always agree with me. Not everyone always loved me. It's just not going to be the case, particularly in that high of a stress environment. Done hundreds of combat missions overseas and get hurt repeatedly. And so basically through the process end up getting retired out. Now I talked about one of our other video live streams crashing in a CH-47. I'll just quickly say that was quite the experience. Some people might call it, by military definitions, I think it's actually referred to as a hard landing. But you ask anyone that was on that aircraft, they say we crashed, as well as I've got a letter written on behalf of one of my team members who passed away in a separate incident while on that deployment, and I think it's a congressman or a senator or somebody writes this letter and mentions this and calls it a helicopter crash. This helicopter is going down, it's falling out of the sky. Pilot, brilliant, and I just start praying, I'm like, Lord, please spare us. And here is a point in my life when I had never really experienced what I would call a miracle. Now I think this truly was, and I say that because just surviving a helicopter crash is one thing, but it's a whole nother ball of wax when that helicopter goes down in a templated minefield. You say, okay, well, you crashed in a minefield, but maybe the mines were old, or they just didn't go off, or for whatever reason, you guys were wrong about it being a minefield. Yeah, except that UN bomb-sniffing dogs and a team was sent out the next day to come find a safe landing zone to fly us out on, because it was a templated minefield, so it's kind of hard to argue that point. We peel off the bird after dropping out of the sky, and the brilliance of that pilot, and I believe the miracle of God, he slams the back end of it down, and we slide for, I don't know how far, might have been 100 meters, coming to a stop, violent stop, but a stop. What happens next is that we pile off this thing, start stripping weapons and setting up a perimeter because we have people coming towards the crash site. We don't know if they're friendly or hostile. We do have attack aircraft in the chalk. Chalk is nothing more. That means that you think of it like a convoy in the sky, right? So we have 2 attack aircraft and then the 2 transport aircraft, helicopters. And so the attack aircraft peel off and go back to engage these personnel on the ground. We're trying to dig fighting positions. And thankfully, the ground is so rock hard, we can't get through it. We're breaking pickaxes that were on the aircraft. Now, they might have just been old, but we're breaking bayonets. We're breaking all manner of things, trying to dig anything to get our bodies down low enough to the surface. We're expecting contact. We're being told that to expect it on the radio. We don't realize we're in a minefield yet, and the order comes over, stop digging, call back Y. It's not exactly how the speak of the way that works over the radio, but I might lose some of you if I give the vernacular that we use. And they say you're in a templated minefield, and we're just, I imagine most of us turning white at that point. So we've crashed in a minefield, and we've been trying to dig fighting positions. So if that's not a miracle, surviving all of that, I don't know what is. And there's more detail to it, but I just want to keep this brief. Hey, come home, plenty more missions, and then survive all manner of rocket attacks, mortar attacks, direct fire incidents, IEDs. Some of the guys didn't make it. They died from these IEDs. That's what ended up killing a lot of them, or injuring a lot more. I get medically retired out. I've lost hearing in this ear. I've got a bad back, fractures in my right hand, and I can either ride a desk or retire out. And I'm going to retire out. So I decide to open up some martial arts schools. I've been doing martial arts most of my life. Besides music, ministry and martial arts have been my three big passions in life. I open these schools up, and at the same time end up going back to one of the same schools to finish my education, Trinity up in Jacksonville, where they allow me to start a martial arts outreach ministry. Awesome ministry experience, because it's not doing martial arts, it's showing them how to do things other than door knocking to get into people's lives for soul winning. This was fairly revolutionary for that type of a church, but through all of this, I had seen so much. Friends die, friends in high school die, been arrested, been through quite a bit. But the one thing I can tell all of you is that I never once thought, well, this must mean God doesn't exist. Some people do come to that conclusion, and I'm not knocking them. I'm not saying, well, you're wrong for coming to that conclusion. I'm only talking about what I can, which is my own personal experiences. I can't talk about your experience because I don't know what it is. But what I can say is that it's perfectly rational to still believe in God even when you do go through these experiences. It may be difficult, and that's, I think, the problem, is that oftentimes when things like this happen, emotions flare and we lose sight of what is rational, and thinking about what is the case, why is this happening. And so I just want to say to anybody watching that's made it this far in the video that, listen, your testimony might be different from mine, and I completely understand that. It's probably most of you are. And I can go on with my testimony. My life is sort of like a box of chocolates, if you know what I mean. You remember the movie that came from. And the main character there, where his life was sort of all over the place doing different things, that's sort of how my life's been. Just understand that it's okay to go through things and experiences. It's okay to doubt. Were there times when I doubted? Sure. I don't think I necessarily ever doubted that God was real, but that has more to do with my youth. I just always saw that there had to be a cause external to the world. I don't think I thought this when I was a child, for everything that existed. It just didn't make any sense to me that it would be the case that all of this came from pure chance, and particularly when you start looking at the way things relate to one another, so many different symbiotic relationships. That just didn't make any sense to me. There's too many elements that appear to be designed for these things to be happenstance. Now that's my opinion. Okay, that doesn't mean you need to agree with me, or that you're wrong if you don't agree with me, or that if you're a Christian and that's not how you feel, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. Okay, I'm just talking about how I feel. Have there been times when I've doubted certain things? So yeah, absolutely. But I always come back to the foundational things that I've known and sort of go, yeah, but here's the problem. Even if that doubt were true, would it fit with everything else that I know? Would it be the best explanation? So yeah, life can be tough. Again, no matter what happens, whether you're passed over for a job or friends and family around you pass away, loved ones die. I lost my uncle and my grandfather in the same year as a teenager. It doesn't mean that God isn't real or that he doesn't love you. So try to remember that, and I hope this testimony helps y'all. If you have any questions about it, let me know. Leave comments below. We love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed it, hit the like button. And hey, if you enjoy the rest of our content, please do subscribe. Be part of our family, if that makes sense. And that's really what we want, to grow this family and to share the good news of Jesus Christ. So I hope this has been beneficial and helpful to all of you. Hey, we love you guys. Take care, and God bless.